A girl apologizes to Naomi for being late. The girl, whose name is Yui, then asks about what they are having for dinner that night. Yui guesses that Naomi is cooking fried chicken, and Naomi confirms that her guess is correct. After school, Naomi and Yui plan to go to the supermarket together, then have dinner at Naomi's place while talking about ordinary, everyday topics. This kind of routine is a familiar and common scene in the daily lives of Naomi and Yui, something that happens naturally without special meaning. Morning arrives, and the alarm rings at 7 o'clock, waking Naomi from her sleep. In the bathroom, she washes her face and looks at herself in the mirror, quietly realizing that she has grown a little more mature. It is now the second spring since Naomi enters high school. In other words, this marks her second year of living alone. Naomi lives in an apartment that is quite spacious for a single person. The apartment is located on the second floor of a rental complex with excellent security, including an automatic locking system, an intercom equipped with a TV monitor, and individual mailboxes. Living alone is not an easy thing for Naomi. Even so, she now lives peacefully in this apartment, which her parents prepare for her as an expression of their affection. There is one particular reason why Naomi feels comfortable staying here. Something quietly captures her heart, and that is the cherry blossoms that bloom beautifully once again this year. It is a view that can only be seen during spring, and Naomi genuinely loves this scenery. Suddenly, Naomi hears a voice carried by the wind. The sound is calm, gentle, and clear, as if it is praising the beauty of the cherry blossoms in full bloom. Naomi turns her head to the side and notices a girl standing there. At that moment, Naomi can only think that the girl is very beautiful. The girl is startled when she notices Naomi's presence, and Naomi immediately feels the need to apologize internally, knowing that she never intends to eavesdrop. The situation makes Naomi feel as though she appears suspicious instead. The girl grows frightened and chooses to apologize as she decides to go back inside. Naomi feels unlucky about how things turn out, and when she checks the time, she realizes that she also needs to leave soon. On the way, Naomi encounters a woman who turns out to be her teacher. Her name is Kasumi. Naomi greets Kasumi, and Kasumi notices that Naomi acts unusually stiff around her. Kasumi asks Naomi to call her like an older sister when they are outside of school. Kasumi Katajiri is not only Naomi's homeroom teacher, but also her cousin. Naomi points out, in her own thoughts, that it is Kasumi who decides that when Naomi wears her school uniform, their relationship becomes strictly that of teacher and student. Kasumi questions this, claiming that she does not remember making such a decision, possibly because she might have been drunk at the time. Kasumi also notices that Naomi seems far more comfortable wearing her uniform after a year has passed. Compared to last year, when Naomi looks new and overly neat, she now appears more natural. Naomi thinks that this change is something that happens to everyone after a year. However, that is not what Kasumi means. From Kasumi's point of view, Naomi appears slightly more mature than before. Naomi reflects that this must be how someone looks to a person who has known them for a long time. 2 years ago, when Naomi is still in her third year of middle school, she begins thinking seriously about her future career. Her mother allows her to live alone on the condition that Naomi secures a full scholarship to cover her school expenses. Naomi wants to grow up as soon as possible, and driven by her impatience, she asks her mother for permission to live independently. It is Kasumi who kindly gives Naomi advice at that time and guides her toward applying for a student scholarship program. When Naomi later informs her mother that she has fulfilled the requirement, her mother goes back on her promise. In that moment, Kasumi steps in angrily on Naomi's behalf. To Kasumi, the situation feels deeply unfair. Naomi is able to live alone now thanks to Kasumi, and because of that, Naomi cannot go against her. In the present, Naomi senses that Kasumi is teasing her by saying that she has grown up. Naomi thinks that if Kasumi can see her as more mature after just 1 year, then it should not be a problem. At the same time, Naomi feels that, given Kasumi's position and age, Kasumi herself should be more mature. Kasumi reacts strongly to this, clearly displeased, and forbids Naomi from making such remarks. Kasumi then gives Naomi a form of punishment. Naomi, in turn, feels that Kasumi's behavior proves that she is not very mature either. Toward the end of the day, Naomi hears that her class is going to receive a new student, someone who transfers in as part of an exchange program. In the classroom, the new student arrives and introduces herself as Yui Elijah Villiers. She is the same girl Naomi sees earlier that morning at the apartment before leaving for school. Yui is an exchange student from England. The teacher explains that Yui has no problems with Japanese, but she may not yet be fully accustomed to life here, so the class is asked to help her if anything comes up. Naomi observes Yui carefully and notices that her presence in the classroom feels different from everyone else. Yui gives off a cold impression, as if an invisible wall surrounds her and keeps others at a distance. Naomi's friend, Kei, turns to Naomi and asks for her impression of Yui. Naomi responds in a vague way, and Kei immediately realizes that this reaction is exactly what he expects from her. The teacher then points out Yui's seat, which is located at the very back of the classroom next to the window. The teacher also explains that if Yui needs anything, she can ask Kasumi, who sits beside her. Yui understands and moves to her assigned seat. Naomi approaches Yui and asks if there is anything she wants to know. Yui tells Naomi that there is no need to worry, since she already understands the school facilities and rules from the information she receives beforehand. After that, the two of them fall into silence, and Naomi feels awkward. Naomi thinks that she should at least carry out the task given to her by her homeroom teacher. But before she can do anything more, she notices that Yui does not look in her direction at all. Naomi does not actually intend to start a casual conversation with Yui. Instead, she senses from Yui's overall atmosphere that Yui does not want to be approached. Naomi also feels that Yui seems unaware that they live next to each other, even though Naomi wants to apologize for what happens that morning. Kei then calls out to Yui and asks about her reason for choosing to study in Japan. Yui answers briefly, attributing it to certain circumstances. Kei apologizes for asking a question that seems difficult to answer, and then shifts to another topic, asking whether there is any place in Japan that Yui wants to visit. Yui says there is none. Kei assumes that Yui might be someone who prefers staying indoors, but Yui denies that assumption. Kei continues by asking what Yui usually does on her days off, and Yui questions whether she is required to answer that. Kei apologizes again and tries one more time by asking if there is anything Yui wants to do while she is in Japan, but Yui once again says there is nothing. Watching this exchange, Naomi realizes that even Kei, who is skilled at communicating with others, is struggling. This is the first time Naomi sees Kei putting in this much effort during a conversation. Naomi suddenly steps in and taps Kei on the shoulder. At the same time, Yui expresses her thanks for the concern, but makes it clear that she does not need anything. Naomi then tells Yui that she can let her know if she ever needs help, since Naomi is assigned to support her. Yui thanks Naomi for that offer. After that, Naomi takes Kei away from the situation. After class ends, Kei remarks that Yui barely speaks throughout the entire day. Naomi agrees with that impression and feels that Yui maintains the same distant attitude from morning until afternoon. Naomi thinks that there are times when people simply want to be alone, so she suggests that Kei should leave Yui by herself for now. Kei, however, feels sympathy for Yui, imagining how lonely it must be to come all the way from another country to study while struggling to make friends. Naomi acknowledges that this way of thinking also makes sense. Kei then mentions that he accidentally overhears some classmates talking earlier. They say that the surname Villiers belongs to British nobility. Even though such a background does not carry much meaning in Japan, it makes Yui sound like an actual princess. Naomi briefly imagines Yui dressed in elegant clothing befitting royalty. Kei continues by saying that Yui is impressive for being able to study abroad at such a young age. Going alone to a foreign country is something Kei himself cannot even imagine doing. From this, Naomi realizes for the first time that Yui comes from England and is living alone in Japan. Kei adds that Kasumi explains Yui is an exchange student, which means she is likely here by herself. Naomi, on the other hand, believes that Yui must be staying with relatives or acquaintances. Then Naomi recalls that the apartment complex where she lives is specifically designed for people who live alone, with a single bedroom, a kitchen, and a living room. She also remembers seeing a moving service delivering boxes to the apartment next door just the day before, although at the time it feels too sudden to mean anything. Even though Naomi's parents' home is only about 2 hours away by Shinkansen, she still struggles when she first starts living alone before eventually getting used to it. Because of that experience, Naomi feels that living alone in a foreign country must be far more difficult, especially for a girl. Naomi thinks that if Yui does not ask for help herself, there is nothing she can do for her. Kei then points out that Naomi is supposed to be assigned as Yui's caretaker. Naomi feels that even with such a role, there is still little she can actively do. Kei considers that response fitting in its own way. The conversation then shifts, and Kei asks whether Naomi has a legal part-time job that day. Naomi teases Kei in return, bringing up Kei's so-called illegal weekend job. Kei protests internally, insisting that helping with the family business should not be called illegal, since it is only a regular nightclub. After that, Naomi takes her leave. Before parting, Kei invites Naomi to visit his family's club someday, promising to give her the best treatment. Naomi decides that she will think about it again once she is old enough to drink alcohol. Tozai Academy, where Naomi studies, is a Catholic mission school with a long history. Inside the campus, there is a small church that is used for weddings, funerals, Sunday services, and other religious activities. Naomi often goes to this church to help as an organ player. The church itself is open to the public and attracts Christian worshippers from outside the school as well. Tozai Academy prohibits its students from taking regular part-time jobs. The only exception is work related to the school itself, which is permitted as an extracurricular activity. In other words, this kind of work is officially recognized by the school as a legal part-time job. Naomi thinks honestly that working secretly outside would offer much better pay, but she fears that her scholarship would be revoked if she were discovered. When the church is empty, Naomi is free to play the organ as much as she likes, and this kind of practice has become part of her daily routine. She continues by playing another piece, fully absorbed in the familiar sound of the instrument. At that moment, Yui enters the church and calls out to Naomi, asking whether Naomi is the one responsible for conducting interviews for the part-time work there. Naomi confirms this, explaining that the nun in charge of the interviews entrusts the process to her, since she is also their homeroom teacher. Yui then asks whether she is allowed to fill out the application form. Naomi explains that the form contains personal information, so if Yui does not want Naomi to see it, she can simply fold the paper. Yui states that she does not mind at all. As Naomi looks over the form, she does not expect Yui to be using something so cute. While Yui fills it out, Naomi asks whether Elijah, which is Yui's middle name, is her baptismal name. Yui confirms this. A baptismal name is given to Christians at the time of their baptism as a sign of their spiritual calling. Since the academy has an exchange system with convent schools overseas, it makes sense for a devout Christian like Yui to attend this school and be introduced to this kind of part-time work. Once Yui finishes filling out the application, Naomi checks her stated motivation and notices that Yui applies in order to cover her daily living expenses. Naomi asks whether this refers to things like food costs, and Yui confirms it. Naomi then wonders whether someone with the Villiers name really needs to pay for her own living expenses, and Yui questions whether there is anything wrong with that. Naomi acknowledges that there is nothing wrong with it. Still, Naomi cannot help but think about the image of a British noble's daughter working part-time to support herself as an exchange student, as if she were struggling financially. Naomi explains that this job does not pay very much, and suggests that if Yui is looking to earn money for living expenses, she might consider a regular job instead. Yui refuses, stating that she wants to earn money within what is officially allowed, even if the pay is low. Naomi realizes that Yui can show this kind of expression as well. Feeling that she has overstepped, Naomi apologizes for asking such personal questions. Yui thanks her for the concern. Naomi then says that she will hand the form to the church staff. She is confident that Yui will not be rejected, but she asks Yui to wait until the end of the week for the final response. Naomi asks whether there is anything else Yui wants to ask. Yui requests permission to ask something unrelated to the job, and Naomi allows it. Yui then asks whether Naomi lives in the apartment next to hers. Naomi realizes that Yui remembers this. Yui explains that she notices it when she sees Naomi in class. Both of them apologize at the same time, surprising each other. Yui believes that letting her unusual singing voice be heard by a neighbor must have caused discomfort. Naomi is confused by the description of it as an unusual singing voice. Yui promises to be more careful in the future and asks for forgiveness. Naomi responds by saying that she will also be more careful, making the situation even. Yui understands and thanks her. Naomi is not entirely sure how to feel, but since Yui does not seem upset, she decides that it should be fine. Naomi then asks if she can say one more thing. Yui listens, and Naomi explains that the singing is not bothersome at all. She adds that Yui has a unique voice. When Yui asks what that means, Naomi explains that Yui's singing voice is very beautiful. As an organ player, Naomi has heard many people sing, but Yui's voice leaves a strong impression on her and never feels unpleasant. Hearing this, Yui becomes embarrassed, her face turning red, and she thanks Naomi. Watching her reaction, Naomi thinks that Yui looks sweet when she is being honest. Yui notices Naomi's gaze and wonders if something is wrong, but Naomi says that it is nothing. After that, Yui leaves to go home. Naomi asks her to come back after school on the weekend so she can explain the job duties to her properly. Yui agrees and asks for Naomi's guidance. Before leaving, Yui turns back and says that Naomi's organ playing is also very beautiful, saying it with a gentle smile. Naomi then excuses herself and prepares to leave as well. Naomi thinks that Yui can smile after all, and she realizes that she had assumed Yui was an aloof and difficult-to-understand princess. Naomi returns to her organ practice. Several hours later, she encounters Yui again. The gentle smile Yui shows earlier is gone, replaced by a cold and intimidating expression that seems to push everyone away. Naomi feels confused by this sudden change in Yui's demeanor. After returning home from her extracurricular activities, Naomi stops by a supermarket and unexpectedly notices Yui there as well. Naomi wonders what Yui is doing in the store. When she looks more closely, she realizes that Yui is trying to buy a bento that is being sold at half price. Naomi approaches her and feels that the encounter is a coincidence. She explains that she also comes to this supermarket because it is close to her apartment, affordable, and offers good options. Naomi makes it clear that she is not following Yui, then turns her attention to what Yui is doing. Yui explains that the bento is being sold at half price, and she finds that unusual. Naomi asks whether Yui is simply curious about that. Yui confirms that it is nothing more than curiosity. Naomi then asks whether this kind of half-price bento does not exist in England. Yui admits that she has never heard of such a thing before and does not know what it means. Naomi explains that bento boxes have an expiration date printed on the packaging, and once they pass that date, the store is no longer allowed to sell them. To reduce losses, the store lowers the price and sells them at half price instead. Yui listens carefully and tries to understand the explanation. Naomi adds that this half-price bento system is very useful. Yui realizes that Naomi is talking about a system rather than just a discount. Naomi thinks it is similar to flash sales in England. At the same time, Naomi recalls that Yui is the daughter of a noble family. She assumes that Yui probably never needed to shop at supermarkets before. This leads Naomi to quietly wonder why someone like Yui, who seems to come from such a privileged background, ends up living alone in Japan. Naomi tells Yui that there is no need to feel confused just because the price is only half. She explains that it is actually the best way to save money for people who live alone. Yui thanks Naomi for the explanation and decides to buy the bento for dinner. However, when Yui reaches out to take it, she realizes that someone else has already taken the bento. Her expression immediately turns gloomy. Later, while Yui is waiting for the elevator at the apartment building, Naomi runs into her again. Naomi once more explains that she is not following Yui at all. Yui reassures her that there is no need to worry, since they attend the same school and live in the same apartment building, making encounters like this completely natural. As they wait for the elevator together, Naomi notices what Yui is carrying and points out that Yui only buys drinks. Yui explains that she hears the store is selling them cheaply today. Naomi thinks back to the moment in the supermarket and realizes that Yui tries to buy the bento for dinner earlier. Naomi also reasons that since Yui stops by another store after leaving the supermarket and then meets her again, it likely means that Yui does not have any time to eat out at all. When Yui notices Naomi's expression, she asks whether something is wrong. Naomi admits that she is just thinking about how Yui does not buy any dinner. Yui explains that she believes drinking water alone is enough, and she thinks it will be fine. As they step into the elevator, Naomi asks whether Yui truly plans to eat nothing at all until she manages to buy a half-price bento the next day. Naomi knows that drinking water alone is not enough to satisfy hunger. She also suspects that Yui may have forgotten to exchange her money into yen and might not be carrying any cash. Yui explains that she has enough money to cover her own expenses. Naomi then considers whether Yui might be feeling unwell or lacking an appetite. Yui responds that she is still adjusting to the time difference, but she feels that everything is fine. When they arrive on the second floor, Yui expresses her appreciation for Naomi's concern, but she explains that she simply does not want to spend unnecessary money. She asks Naomi not to worry about her, and adds that she wants to gain as much experience as possible living on her own. Naomi reflects that although Yui looks like a princess, her attitude does not resemble that image at all. Yui notices Naomi's reaction and wonders what Naomi is thinking, but Naomi brushes it off as nothing important. When they reach the front of their apartment doors, Naomi asks Yui to wait for a moment. Naomi goes inside her apartment to get something. Deep down, Naomi believes that Yui's parents must be sending her enough money to live on her own. Naomi senses that Yui is deliberately choosing not to rely on that money and is trying to manage on her own, quietly solving the problem without telling anyone. This realization makes Naomi genuinely like Yui's personality. Naomi returns with a plastic bag containing food and hands it to Yui. She explains that it is leftover nikujiga, similar to minestrone soup, and that it should help Yui get through the night until the next day. Yui remains silent, clearly confused by the situation. Naomi goes on to explain that if Yui has a microwave, reheating it will be easy, and if not, she can warm it up in a bowl or pot on the stove. Naomi asks whether Yui has a microwave or a pot. Yui confirms that she does, and then asks how much she should pay for the food. Naomi tells her that it is free. Naomi adds that she is not very good at cooking and cannot bring herself to eat it, so Yui should not expect it to taste particularly good. Yui accepts the food. Naomi has been cooking for herself for a year now, and in her own judgment, the food is barely edible. She also doubts that it would suit the tastes of someone like a princess. Yui then expresses deep appreciation for the gesture, but says that she has no reason to accept Naomi's kindness. Naomi explains that Yui fails to buy the half-price bento because she spends time talking with Naomi, and since the food is only leftovers, Yui should not worry about it. Yui insists that she is truly grateful for everything Naomi has done, but she does not want to cause trouble for others. She then tries to return the leftover nikujiga. Naomi feels that Yui does not need to apologize at all. Yui mentions that this is simply something adults often say. Naomi explains that although she does not fully understand Yui's situation, knowing that a classmate living next door is trying to endure hunger makes it impossible for her to ignore it. For Naomi, helping one another is a natural thing to do. Yui finally stops trying to return the food. Naomi adds that she understands this feeling well because she has experienced something similar herself. Yui wonders whether Naomi is the same as her. Naomi reflects that she does nothing meaningful the previous year and feels foolish because of it. She admits that she is stubborn and causes many problems for others. After reflecting on herself, she receives a lot of help from people around her, and somehow she manages to get through it all. Naomi acknowledges that this is not really her place, but she asks Yui to accept the food as an act of Naomi's own selfishness. She also admits that she dislikes the idea of people trying to handle everything on their own. After saying this, Naomi excuses herself and goes back into her apartment. Once inside, Naomi feels that she may have talked far too much. Naomi has no intention of asking for anything in return. She has no hidden motive, and she sees it simply as extra help for today. Naomi also feels that this is much better for Yui than forcing herself to endure hunger until the next evening. Suddenly, the sound of the doorbell rings. When Naomi opens the door, she finds Yui standing there. Naomi asks what is going on. With a tired expression, Yui apologizes and explains that although she does have a microwave, the electricity in her apartment is not working, so she cannot use it. Yui apologizes again for not realizing this earlier. Naomi is taken by surprise. After a short while, Naomi prepares food and serves it to Yui. She tells Yui that she can use chopsticks, or a spoon and fork if she is not comfortable with chopsticks. Yui replies that she can use chopsticks fairly well. Naomi then invites Yui to start eating. As Naomi begins to eat, she notices that Yui is only staring at the food. Naomi asks whether something is wrong, whether Yui is not hungry, or if there is something she cannot eat. Yui explains that she is not picky about food. Naomi points out that since the food is already there, Yui should eat it while it is still warm, even though it is not anything luxurious. Yui follows Naomi's suggestion and carefully takes her first bite. As soon as she tastes it, Yui falls silent and feels happy when she realizes that the food is actually very delicious. She tries another dish and finds that it tastes just as good. Yui then eats eagerly until all of the food is gone. After finishing, Yui thanks Naomi for the meal. Naomi then offers Yui some green tea. Naomi suggests that Yui should rest while Naomi cleans up the dishes and the kitchen. Yui asks if she can help instead. Naomi asks Yui to bring her dirty plate over, since Naomi plans to wash it herself. Yui brings the plate and stands beside Naomi while holding it. Naomi asks what Yui is doing. Yui says that she is waiting for Naomi to finish washing the dishes. Naomi explains that Yui does not need to wait and can simply stack the plates together. Yui worries that doing so might leave stains on the plates. Naomi asks Yui to leave it to her and assures her that she will wash everything properly. Yui apologizes again, saying that she is not used to things like this. Naomi gets the impression that Yui has never washed dishes before, which makes Naomi think once more that Yui really is like a princess. Naomi tells Yui that she does not need to apologize every time she learns something new. Yui apologizes again out of habit, then becomes confused and apologizes once more, lowering her head in embarrassment. When Yui notices Naomi laughing, she asks why Naomi is laughing. Naomi says that she finds Yui very funny. Yui becomes even more confused and asks whether Naomi is sure she is not annoyed with her. Naomi replies that she does not find it annoying at all. Yui says that if this happened in England, it would be very embarrassing. Naomi explains that she does not know what life is like in Yui's home, but she would never be upset over something like this. Naomi also admits that she thinks Yui is very cute, which is why she laughs. Yui grows even more puzzled. Naomi thinks that it must be difficult to belong to a noble family that is very strict about such matters. Naomi reassures Yui that she does not need to worry about it. She suggests that Yui drink her tea and wait at the dining table while Naomi finishes cleaning up. Yui agrees and waits at the table. Deep down, Yui is afraid that she cannot help Naomi if she just stands there earlier. She is also still confused about why she is being called cute. After everything is done, Naomi gives Yui some portions of minestrone and nikujaga to take with her, and Yui thanks her. Naomi advises Yui to make sure her electricity is working by the next morning and asks whether she has contacted the electric company. Yui explains that she has completed the procedure to open an account, but the electricity still has not turned on. Naomi thinks that the power should normally come back on soon after contacting the company. Then Naomi suddenly remembers something and asks whether Yui has checked the circuit breaker. Yui does not know what that is and asks what Naomi means. Naomi points to the circuit breaker and explains that if Yui switches it on, the electricity will come back. Yui apologizes again for her lack of knowledge, feeling that it has caused trouble for Naomi. Yui feels embarrassed, especially since she has already been treated to such a delicious meal. Naomi reminds her that she has already said this before, that it is normal for anyone not to know something the first time, and that there is nothing wrong with Yui not knowing about it. For Naomi, people who leave things they do not understand unattended are making a serious mistake. She also wants Yui to stop wearing such a downcast expression, because Naomi is genuinely happy knowing that Yui is able to eat a proper and satisfying meal. Naomi reflects on her own past, remembering that when she first begins applying for her scholarship, she also believes that she can manage everything on her own. In reality, however, she does not even know how to properly use a washing machine or that a vacuum cleaner has a filter that needs attention. Her parents, her older sister, and Kay all support her and help shape her into the person she becomes now. That experience is the reason why Naomi feels such a strong desire to help Yui. Naomi also finds it deeply impressive to learn that Yui comes to Japan with a clear purpose. Yui acknowledges this. She feels that she is still naive, yet she chooses to live on her own despite that. As a way of making up for the trouble she causes, Yui asks if she is allowed to properly express her gratitude, and she offers heartfelt thanks to Naomi. In response, Naomi asks Yui to let her know whenever she needs help, explaining that this situation itself is an opportunity for Yui. Yui accepts Naomi's words, and when the time comes, she hopes that she can rely on Naomi's help once again. In the morning at school, Naomi arrives and immediately notices that Kay looks sleepy. Naomi observes that, as usual, Kay appears completely exhausted at the start of the week. Kay explains that he has been busy with work, and for him, weekends are the best time to earn money, so he does not want to waste them. Not long after that, Kay starts dozing off during class. Naomi then sees Yui enter the classroom. Yui passes by Naomi without stopping and goes straight to her seat. The two of them do not exchange any words, which makes Naomi think that what happens the previous day might simply be a coincidence. Naomi feels that they still do not know each other well enough to greet one another naturally, even though Naomi herself does not plan to greet Yui either. At the same time, Naomi finds herself wondering whether Yui manages to buy a half-price bento the day before. Suddenly, Yui turns her head toward Naomi and greets her in a hesitant manner. After that brief moment, Yui turns back to face the window. She then mentions that after what happens the day before, she wants to try changing herself, even if only a little. Naomi finally understands what Yui means. Naomi responds in kind, and this reaction causes Yui to become shy. During lunchtime, a female student invites Yui to eat lunch together. Yui accepts the invitation, making sure that she will not be a bother. She then joins them for lunch. Kay notices the scene and comments that Miss Villiers does not seem to need a caretaker if she is already getting along well with others. Naomi agrees with Kay and feels relieved, happy to see that Yui is not having any trouble. One of the girls mentions that just a week earlier, Yui is extremely unfriendly, which makes her curious about what happens to Yui over the weekend. Other students also grow interested in Yui's story. Naomi watches quietly and feels that Yui is genuinely doing her best to change. After school, two male students approach Yui and invite her to go to karaoke with them. They add that if Yui is not good at singing, they can go to an arcade instead. Yui rejects the invitation bluntly and without hesitation. Naomi notices that Yui remains cold toward the male students. The boys start referring to Yui with the nickname Kudarella, recognizing her distant attitude. Later, at the church office, Naomi hands Yui her part-time work permit. Yui expresses her gratitude. Naomi explains once again that this part-time job is only needed when the church is short-staffed during services. Just as Naomi mentions before, neither of them can earn much money from it. Yui acknowledges this and concludes that the next opportunity to work part-time will be during the next Easter service. Naomi confirms this and adds that Yui will only be able to work again on the last Sunday of the month. Yui notes that this feels quite far apart compared to regular jobs. Naomi explains that April is an especially busy month for their school, so they decide to open part-time shifts toward the end of the month. In addition, part-time workers are expected to participate in special events whenever possible. Naomi asks whether Yui will be free on that day. Yui replies that she will be available. As they talk, Naomi notices the same cat illustration once again in Yui's notebook. Seeing it for the second time makes Naomi curious, and she wonders whether that kind of design is currently popular. Suddenly, Kasumi shows up and asks where Naomi is. Naomi replies that they are still within the school grounds. From Kasumi's point of view, if there is no one else around, then it is safe enough. Naomi reminds her that breaking the rules so casually will only make the principal angry. Kasumi becomes annoyed and complains that Naomi is no longer cute, saying that he has completely lost his cuteness. At the same time, Yui is watching them from a distance, and Naomi notices her gaze. Naomi explains to Yui that their homeroom teacher is actually Naomi's cousin. Yui immediately understands, realizing that this is the reason why Naomi and Kasumi share the same family name. Kasumi then asks whether Naomi and Yui are getting along. She cheerfully says that she is happy to have Yui as a fellow church member starting today. Kasumi also adds that although Naomi may not look very friendly at first glance, he is actually a good guy. Yui replies that she already knows that and says that she is pleased to meet Kasumi. Kasumi looks surprised and wonders how Yui already knows this about Naomi. Naomi suddenly cuts in and asks Kasumi what she really needs, pointing out that whenever Kasumi comes to see him, it usually means she is in some kind of trouble. Kasumi denies it and complains instead, saying that she wishes Naomi would stop being unpleasant every time she visits his place. Growing irritated, she tells Naomi to bring her the small booklets that will be distributed next week and asks him to carry them for her. Naomi is confused about why Kasumi is getting angry, since this is technically his responsibility anyway. Still, he apologizes. He then asks Yui to wait for him for a moment, explaining that he will continue their conversation afterward. Yui agrees to wait. Kasumi comments that this is exactly what she expects from Naomi, saying that his words sound nice, and she urges him to finish the task quickly. While Naomi and Kasumi leave, Yui quietly takes something out of her bag. Outside the church, Naomi feels that everything is taking longer than he expects. Suddenly, he hears singing coming from inside the church. He immediately recognizes the voice. It is Yui's. Naomi goes back inside and sees Yui standing at the altar singing. He is completely mesmerized by the sound of her voice. After a while, Yui notices him and panics. Naomi quickly says that it is his fault and explains that he does not mean to eavesdrop on her singing. He honestly tells her that her voice is beautiful and asks whether she is part of a choir back in England. Naomi then suggests that Yui could take on choir-related work if she wants to earn more money, explaining that the more requests she gets, the higher her income could become. Yui becomes embarrassed and insists that she cannot sing. She also admits that she no longer has the courage to sing in front of many people. Realizing that he has overstepped, Naomi apologizes, saying that he should not have said such things. Yui then says that she should be the one apologizing instead. After that, Yui takes the initiative to carry the other bag, filled with the small booklets. Naomi thanks her for the help. Yui then hurriedly leaves the church, carrying her bag outside. Watching her go, Naomi reflects quietly, realizing once again that everyone carries their own problems in life. After that, Naomi and Yui arrange the small booklets together in the office. Naomi expresses his gratitude, feeling that Yui helps him avoid unnecessary trouble earlier. Yui, however, thinks that she does not contribute very much. At this point, Naomi finishes assisting his cousin. When he starts to leave, he suddenly realizes that Yui is no longer following him, so he turns back. Yui then shyly hands a gift to Naomi. She explains that this is meant as a present for him, even though it comes rather late. She feels uncomfortable about visiting Naomi on a day off, which is why the timing is delayed, and she apologizes for that. Naomi wonders what the gift might be. Yui explains that she wants to thank him for the meal he gives her the previous day, including the minestrone and nikujaga that taste especially good to her. She expresses her gratitude once again. Naomi responds that he simply enjoys doing things like that, so Yui does not need to repay him. He then asks for permission to open the gift, and Yui allows it while apologizing again, saying that it is nothing luxurious. When Naomi sees that the gift is a snack, he becomes curious and wonders whether Yui makes it herself. Yui blushes and nods in response. Yui explains that Naomi helps her save a lot of money, and for her, giving something back is not a bad thing. She shares that the idea comes to her when she goes to the supermarket to buy half-price bento. There, she finds the recipe and thinks that she can follow Naomi's example and give it a try herself. She apologizes once more while explaining this. Naomi assumes that Yui must have seen one of the recipe displays at the supermarket. He reflects that, in contrast to himself, who is relatively skilled at cooking, Yui has almost no cooking experience, which makes it surprising to him that she manages to make this snack. Yui explains that wasting money feels like a mistake to her, so she decides to try her best instead. Naomi then begins tasting the snack, which makes Yui feel anxious as she watches him. After a moment, Naomi judges that it is made quite well and that it tastes good. Yui's anxiety fades, replaced by relief and happiness, as she realizes that the flavor suits Naomi's taste. She feels genuinely happy simply because she is able to make someone else happy. Naomi feels a bit embarrassed himself and admits that the snack is made so well that it is hard to believe it is Yui's first attempt. Naomi continues eating the snack, prompting Yui to worry slightly and check whether he is really fine. After that, Naomi brings up how Yui mentions earlier that she wants to change. Yui confirms that she does say that. Naomi encourages her by explaining that change can happen little by little, pointing out that he himself is able to change over time as well. Hearing this, Yui feels encouraged and says that she will do her best. Naomi acknowledges that this attitude is what true motivation looks like. He also adds that Yui can learn her work duties gradually, step by step. Yui agrees with him and expresses her happiness about being able to work together with Naomi. At night, Kasumi calls Naomi and asks whether he has free time the next day. She invites him to go shopping together, explaining that she feels uneasy going alone because she is afraid of being bothered by people who approach her with unwanted intentions. Naomi has no specific plans for the next day, so he acknowledges that he is available and wonders why the plan has to be on Sunday. Kasumi does not give an explanation and instead firmly decides that they will meet in Yokohama at 2 in the afternoon. Before Naomi can respond further, the call suddenly ends. The next day, Naomi waits in Yokohama, but Kasumi does not arrive. After some time, he calls her. Kasumi answers and apologizes, explaining that a large number of forms suddenly need to be submitted the next day. Naomi becomes irritated because this means Kasumi makes him come all the way there only to cancel the plan at the last minute. Before he can say much, Kasumi ends the call again and sends a message saying that she owes him for this. Naomi remains annoyed and assumes that Kasumi must be joking, since he has already lost his valuable sundae. Even though he has gone all the way to Yokohama, there is nothing left for him to do, so he decides to head home. As he is about to leave, Naomi overhears a conversation among a group of pickup artists and is surprised to realize that such people truly exist. When he looks more closely, he is shocked to see that the person they are trying to escort is Yui, who is clearly refusing them. The men insist on accompanying her to a shop, claiming that she does not know the way, but Yui firmly maintains that she can walk on her own. Despite her resistance, they continue pressuring her and even push her to give them her phone number. From a distance, Naomi can clearly see that Yui does not want their attention at all. Naomi hesitates, knowing that he dislikes interfering in other people's business and that he is not good at acting convincingly. Even so, he cannot ignore the situation when someone he knows is clearly in trouble. He approaches Yui and the two men who are bothering her. He presents himself as the person Yui comes to meet and acknowledges the situation, creating a reason to step in. Yui is visibly surprised when she realizes that Naomi comes to her side. Naomi then takes responsibility for the situation, implying that he makes her wait. The two men back off, apologize for the misunderstanding, and leave, assuming that they have interrupted a date. Once they are gone, Naomi checks on Yui's condition. Yui explains that the situation frightens her greatly. Naomi is taken aback when he sees her trembling. He reflects that even his cousin, who is Japanese, is afraid of situations like this, and if he himself were abroad and approached by two unfamiliar men, he would also feel scared despite being male. Realizing this, Naomi feels sorry that he does not step in sooner. Yui expresses her gratitude toward Naomi for helping her. Naomi understands that this is not a moment to leave Yui alone and decides to stay with her instead of walking away. Naomi then asks what Yui is doing in Yokohama. Yui explains that she comes there to buy a smartphone. Naomi feels surprised when he realizes that Yui has never used a smartphone until now. When he thinks about it more carefully, he recalls that he has indeed never seen Yui holding a mobile phone before. Yui explains that she truly does not feel the need for one, but her family informs the school principal that she must have a phone so she can stay in contact with them. Naomi confirms his understanding of the situation, noting that as soon as Yui arrives in Yokohama, the two men immediately approach and bother her, which Yui acknowledges as true. Seeing her condition, Naomi suggests that they find a place where Yui can rest for a while. He thinks that if Yui still plans to buy a smartphone, it is better for her to go after she feels calmer. Naomi decides that he will go with her. Yui looks surprised at first, but Naomi explains that because he is male, his presence reduces the chance of her being bothered again. He also makes it clear that Yui can refuse if she does not want him to come along. Yui assures him that she does not mind at all if Naomi accompanies her. Even so, she feels conflicted because Naomi is spending his precious day off helping her with a personal matter. Naomi responds that Yui already knows he has a habit of getting involved in other people's affairs. If Yui does not mind, he asks her to consider this as a form of his own selfishness and to allow him to satisfy that tendency. He adds that he is free at the moment, so it is not a problem. He also mentions that besides acting as a deterrent to unwanted attention, he can show her around the area, which makes him feel that he can be useful to her. Yui remains quiet for a moment, then suddenly laughs and remarks that, as always, she feels Naomi is very kind. Naomi downplays it, saying that it is simply because he has free time. Yui laughs again. Yui then asks whether Naomi is willing to accompany her to buy a smartphone. Naomi agrees and says that if Yui wants, he can take her to a shop he knows. At the smartphone store, a staff member introduces various smartphone models to Yui. The staff explains which models are the newest and also shows older versions. They mention that the latest models support high-quality 4K resolution, are water-resistant, have improved camera performance, and offer storage capacity up to 2 terabytes. With such features, the phone can be used freely for recording videos, playing games, reading ebooks, and many other activities. Faced with so much information, Yui becomes confused and asks Naomi about the meaning of the unfamiliar term being used. Naomi explains that it simply refers to the model or type of the device. Seeing her confusion, he gently reassures her and encourages her to calm down and take a breath. Yui still feels unsure about which one to choose because there are so many options. Naomi explains that new models are released every year, which is why the selection feels overwhelming. Naomi then suggests that Yui choose a model similar to his own. He reasons that if she uses the same type, it will be easier for him to explain how to operate it whenever she does not understand something. At the same time, he makes it clear that the final decision is entirely up to her. Feeling relieved by his explanation, Yui tells the staff that she wants the same model as Naomi's. The staff presents that model and asks her to choose the color she prefers. After making her choice, Yui proceeds with the purchase. Yui then expresses her gratitude to Naomi, explaining that she would not have been able to buy the smartphone if she had gone alone. Naomi feels genuinely happy knowing that Yui now owns a smartphone, and Yui feels the same way. Naomi is slightly surprised when he notices that Yui chooses a cute pink color, but he also feels that it suits her well. He asks whether Yui is truly fine with having the same smartphone model as him, since she actually has the freedom to choose a different one. Yui replies that she really likes it, which surprises Naomi. She explains that there are too many options earlier, and she feels relieved to be able to buy something cute like this. Naomi then understands that what Yui means by liking it is the appearance. Naomi asks how well Yui can use the smartphone. Yui responds by saying that it feels like giving pearls to a pig, meaning it is the same as being given an expensive gift without understanding how to use it. She then asks Naomi to teach her how to use the phone. Naomi feels pleased by her request. He asks whether there are any applications Yui wants to use, which only makes Yui ask what applications are. Naomi explains that they are essentially tools such as games, video platforms, and browsers. Yui apologizes, admitting that she is unfamiliar with such things. At that moment, Naomi realizes that this is truly Yui's first time using a mobile phone. Naomi starts by showing her the contact list and asks whether Yui has her family's phone numbers. Yui answers that she has her older sister's number. She searches through her bag for her address book, but cannot find it. Yui apologizes again, explaining that she leaves the address book at home. Naomi reassures her and tells her not to look so down. He thinks that Yui can use his own number to practice, though that would mean he becomes the first contact in her phone. Naomi suggests that Yui can wait until she gets home instead. However, Yui asks for Naomi's contact information. Naomi is surprised, though he does not feel that there is anything wrong with it. He asks whether Yui is truly comfortable with that, and Yui asks why it would not be fine. Naomi struggles to explain his hesitation. Yui then earnestly asks Naomi to teach her. Seeing that Yui is fine with it, Naomi shows her how to input his contact information. After that, Yui successfully adds her first contact to the phone, which is Naomi. She feels amazed that she manages to do it herself, and feels happy that Naomi becomes her first contact. Naomi points out that the way Yui phrases her words could lead to misunderstandings, and he suggests that she simply say that Naomi is her first contact. Yui responds that she does not think there is anything wrong with what she says. Naomi explains that the meaning can be different in Japan. Yui presses him to explain if it is something dangerous. Naomi asks her to calm down and assures her that it is not dangerous. He then encourages Yui to continue practicing by adding more contacts. Yui follows his advice. After a while, she asks again where the misunderstanding lies. Suddenly, Naomi starts running, saying that he forgets to recharge his SIM card. At the train station, Naomi notices that the platform is becoming crowded with passengers. Yui says that if she had not met Naomi, she does not know what would have happened to her. She explains that she comes to Japan because she wants to change herself, and she feels that without meeting Naomi, she would not have had the chance to change. Naomi feels that Yui is exaggerating and thinks that this is not exactly the issue. Yui rejects his explanation and insists that it truly is the reason. She then smiles at him, which makes Naomi feel embarrassed. Naomi says that he is glad if he can be useful to her. An announcement suddenly informs them that the train is about to arrive. At that moment, Naomi receives a message from Yui on his phone, containing a simple note of thanks for everything that happens today. Midnight arrives, and after listening to the weather forecast, Naomi decides to go to sleep. Not long after that, the doorbell suddenly rings, making Naomi wonder who would visit at such a late hour. The visitor turns out to be Yui, who comes to ask for help in a desperate state. Yui is genuinely terrified because she sees something moving and staring at her. Naomi tries to calm her down, realizing that what frightens Yui is nothing more than a cockroach. Even so, Yui panics and makes it clear that she cannot endure it at all. Overwhelmed by fear, she hides behind Naomi. For Naomi, this moment becomes the first time he enters a girl's room, and he never expects that the reason would be to deal with a cockroach. As he steps inside, he notices an indescribable scent filling Yui's room. Naomi instinctively associates it with the kind of delicate fragrance often described in romantic manga, the scent of a well-known girl. For a brief moment, he almost believes that such romantic stories about quiet anticipation might be real, but he forces himself back to reality when Yui urges him to look under the bed. Naomi hesitates, thinking that approaching a girl's bed feels improper, yet Yui insists, leaving him no choice but to ask her to calm down while he handles the situation. Naomi spends the next several minutes trying to chase the cockroach away, and after about 10 minutes, he finally succeeds. Yui expresses her gratitude to Naomi, clearly at a loss for how to properly thank him. Naomi reassures her and makes sure that she calms down and stops trembling, that he reflects that if he can stay composed, the situation might almost seem peaceful, since he is standing in a girl's room late at night while an adorable girl in pajamas clings tightly to him, even though the reality is far from calm. After things settle down, Yui apologizes for disturbing Naomi during his personal time. She offers to make a cup of tea for him and asks him to sit down. When Naomi looks more closely, he notices that Yui's hair is slightly damp, making him suspect that she has just finished taking a bath. He understands that this is an emergency, yet he cannot help noticing how helpless Yui looks in this state. Yui soon brings him a cup of tea. Naomi finishes his tea quickly, while Yui only drinks a little. She wonders if she should make another cup for him, but Naomi refuses and asks her to sit down instead. Naomi then goes to the kitchen and prepares 2 cups to make tea again. While in the kitchen, he feels impressed when he notices that Yui's kitchenware comes from well-known brands, which strengthens his belief that Yui truly comes from a noble background. He recalls that Yui has never done kitchen work before, so he assumes that her parents are the ones who prepare everything for her. Naomi mentions this observation to Yui. She explains that she wants to imitate Naomi by cooking for herself and has tried several times, but she can never achieve the right taste. Yui also realizes that buying half-price bento or small side dishes saves time and costs less. Hearing this, Naomi becomes convinced that Yui does not actually skip meals, since buying instant noodles or small portions of side dishes is certainly cheaper and easier than cooking. Even so, Naomi thinks that there are other ways that could be even more economical. He reflects that if they were to have dinner together, the cost would be much lower than eating separately, because preparing one extra portion hardly requires more time, and in the end, it is only an additional serving. Naomi then suggests that Yui have dinner together with him at his apartment. Yui is taken aback by the idea of being invited to share dinner. She wonders if Naomi means that it will be just the 2 of them, and Naomi confirms it. He explains that when it comes to cooking, preparing 2 portions does not require significantly more effort than cooking for 1, and the cost of ingredients does not immediately double either. Naomi adds that if they cooperate in preparing dinner, it becomes something that benefits both of them. Yui takes time to think about the suggestion. She feels that the idea could be good for her, yet she worries that it might become an extra burden for Naomi. Naomi tells her that this is not the case. He explains that he can also reduce his own food expenses, and if Yui helps with the preparation, it lessens his workload. Because of that, he proposes the idea as something mutually beneficial. Yui agrees with his reasoning, although she still hesitates. Naomi then mentions that there is another major advantage for him as well, which makes Yui curious about what that advantage might be. Naomi explains that when Yui eats the food he prepares, she genuinely seems to enjoy it. To Naomi, that alone already brings benefits to both of them. Yui comes to see Naomi as kind-hearted. Naomi clarifies that he is not acting out of kindness, but because he notices that Yui is troubled by many things. He admits that his actions are not driven by pure goodwill, but by his own sense of satisfaction. Inviting Yui to have dinner together helps keep her away from people who might bother her, much like when he accompanies her to buy a smartphone. All of this involvement happens simply because Naomi wants to do these things. If there is a reason behind his actions, it lies in Yui's praise, such as when she compliments his cooking. In addition to that, Yui herself feels happy when she can make Naomi happy. She also states that if she had never met Naomi, she does not know what might have happened to her. At the core of it all, Naomi simply feels happy whenever he sees Yui smile. Yui then asks Naomi to listen to her story. Naomi listens as Yui explains that she is born to a Japanese mother and an English father, and that she grows up in Japan. By the time she becomes aware of her surroundings, she lives only with her mother, while her father is nowhere to be seen. Yui explains that because her father comes from a noble family, his family forbids him from living together with Yui's mother in Japan. When Yui is 6 years old, her mother passes away. With no relatives left in Japan, Yui is taken in by her father's family in England. However, because she is of mixed heritage, she is not welcomed by them. She is treated as a nuisance by the entire family, and even her own father never tries to care for her. The only person who shows her any concern is her stepsister. Because of this environment, Yui tries not to stand out and does her best not to trouble anyone. Yet one day, she becomes involved in a serious incident and is no longer accepted in what is supposed to be her own home. As a result, her stepsister sends her to Japan under the pretense of studying abroad, which is how Yui eventually ends up there. As Naomi listens to her story, he comes to understand her circumstances. Yui then reflects that this situation is clearly an opportunity for her to change. She believes that leaving her home and meeting Naomi are necessary steps toward achieving that goal. As she has said before, Yui wants to change herself. She no longer wants to live with her head lowered, and the kindness shown to her by others makes her realize this. That is why she wants to say it clearly now, asking Naomi to help her until she is able to stand on her own. Naomi feels that Yui's words about wanting to change carry the strength of her determination as a young girl who grows up in an environment where she cannot rely on anyone and lives in constant fear of becoming a burden to others. For many years of her life, Yui can only hold her breath and endure. Her only biological father abandons her at the moment she falls into hardship, forcing her to leave the place she once calls home. Now, Yui finally voices a sincere plea for help, putting genuine emotion into those words. In response, Naomi asks her to lift her head and urges her to stop asking, begging, or pleading for help as if she must lower herself to receive it. Yui is taken aback by this. Naomi explains that this situation is not about deciding who helps whom or weighing such conditions. To him, it is already clear that helping a friend who is struggling is something that should naturally be done. Through those words, Yui feels acknowledged as Naomi's friend. Naomi also adds that he cannot easily claim to fully understand the weight and determination behind everything Yui has shared with him. Even so, if he can become a source of strength for her, he wants to support her in a proper and balanced way. For Naomi, when a friend is in trouble, he does not need reasons, conditions, or requests to step in and help. Yui is deeply moved by this and expresses that she also wants to be friends with Naomi. Naomi shares the same feeling toward her. Yui smiles with genuine happiness, feeling warmth she has not known for a long time. The next evening, Yui visits Naomi's apartment. Naomi, who has already finished cooking, invites her inside. As soon as Yui steps in, she notices a rich and appetizing aroma filling the room. She has been looking forward to this moment ever since she receives Naomi's message, eager to finally taste the shagayaki he prepares. Hearing this makes Naomi feel pleased, and to him, that anticipation already feels like an enthusiastic answer. Yui offers to help, and Naomi asks her to finely slice the cabbage. Yui asks if this task requires a knife, and Naomi confirms it. For Yui, this immediately feels like a challenge. When she holds the knife, she realizes that she does not actually know how to use it properly. Seeing this, Naomi gently suggests that she help by washing dishes instead, asking her to stay calm and sit comfortably for the moment. Yui apologizes for not being able to help more and resolves to at least do her best with the washing. Naomi reassures her that this is perfectly fine, explaining that skills like these can be learned slowly and step by step. Naomi then notices that Yui looks a little downcast. To change the mood, he asks her to taste the food. Yui responds that she cannot contribute merely by tasting. Naomi explains that tasting is also an important part of cooking, and Yui agrees to do it. When Naomi offers her a bite, he reminds her to be careful because the food is still hot. Yui immediately takes the bite and chews slowly, while Naomi is momentarily startled by the realization that he has just fed her himself. After a moment, Yui expresses how delicious the food is. She repeats that it tastes truly wonderful. Naomi, feeling embarrassed, avoids turning toward her. Yui notices this and wonders what is wrong. Naomi admits that Yui's expression feels a bit too intimate. Only then does Yui realize it herself, becoming flustered and apologizing for showing such an improper expression. Naomi says that he does not mind at all. Yui explains that she does not think much about it at the time and cannot refuse when Naomi offers it to her. Naomi reassures her again that it is fine and asks once more about the taste. Yui confirms that it is very delicious, and hearing that makes Naomi genuinely happy. Naomi finishes preparing the meal and encourages Yui to enjoy it while it is still warm. Before eating, Yui apologizes because she wants to ask for something. Naomi gives her his attention, and Yui expresses her wish that Naomi would call her not by her family name, but by her given name, Yui. Naomi guesses that her given name is Yui, and she confirms it. Yui understands that Naomi does not usually call someone by their given name unless he feels close to them. However, she personally dislikes being called by her family name, Villiers. She feels that it is acceptable if classmates or people she is not close to address her that way, but she would feel genuinely happy if her friends could call her by her real name. From Naomi's perspective, Yui shows a quiet strength. The day before, she speaks about her past as if it is nothing serious, yet Naomi is certain that a past like hers cannot simply be insignificant. He senses how painful those memories must be each time her family name is spoken, and a single glance at her expression is enough for him to understand. Realizing this, Naomi decides that he will call her by her given name from now on. Yui thanks him for that. Naomi then expresses that he also wants Yui to stop adding honorifics to his name, because it feels unbalanced if only he speaks casually while she maintains formality. Yui initially thinks that something might be wrong, and Naomi agrees, explaining that it feels strange to be addressed formally in this situation. He also thinks that the classmates who call him by his nickname would probably enjoy the casual tone. Naomi then asks Yui to call him by his given name as well, reasoning that it is not unusual in foreign countries for people to address each other that way. Yui explains that where she comes from, people usually address others by their family names, and she adds that calling a boy by his given name feels very embarrassing to her. Naomi admits that he would also feel embarrassed calling a girl by her given name. Yui agrees, realizing that she is the one who asked him to do exactly that earlier. She takes a deep breath and exhales slowly to calm herself. After gathering her courage, Yui calls Naomi by his given name. She makes several mistakes while trying to pronounce it correctly, and Naomi ends up laughing, while Yui insists that she is being serious about it. Naomi apologizes, admitting that it is genuinely funny, and Yui soon laughs as well, finding the situation awkward yet amusing. After that, they express their hope to treat each other well from now on and share a light-hearted toast together. Meanwhile, at the Villiers family residence, a young woman notes that there is no new information for the day. She calls for a servant and instructs him to arrange a ticket to Japan for tomorrow or the day after. The servant accepts the request without hesitation. The young woman then wonders whether Yui is doing well on her own. At the same time, Yui is spending a relaxed and cheerful moment with Naomi after dinner, sharing laughter and warmth that feels unfamiliar yet comforting to her. In the classroom, Naomi arrives and notices Yui quietly using her phone. They acknowledge each other and exchange a brief greeting. Not long after, Kei comes over and whispers to Naomi that the fact Yui greets him is already a significant sign of progress. Naomi responds that he thinks people generally do not ignore someone who greets them. Kei clarifies that he is not talking about ignoring others, but rather about Yui's usual atmosphere. Normally, Yui carries a dark and heavy aura that signals she does not want anyone to approach her. From Kei's point of view, the disappearance of that intimidating presence is already a major step forward. Kei then suggests that Naomi should praise Yui, since Naomi is still technically on duty. Naomi explains that if the person involved is not currently facing trouble, then it is not his place to interfere unnecessarily. Naomi then looks in Yui's direction. Yui notices his gaze, but she immediately turns her face toward the window. Earlier, Naomi makes it clear that he and Yui should keep their distance whenever they are outside. Yui asks how they should address each other in public. Naomi explains that if their classmates find out that they eat dinner together every night at his apartment, unpleasant rumors will inevitably spread. If such rumors arise, Yui will be the one who ends up facing problems. At first, Yui does not understand what kind of bad rumors he means. Naomi gives an example, such as people assuming they are dating or something similar. After that, Yui understands what Naomi is trying to say. She knows that Naomi is doing this for her sake, yet she cannot remove his kindness from her thoughts, and that lingering awareness makes her chest ache. Later, in the cafeteria during lunch, Naomi asks Kei for his opinion about situations where certain things should not be told to someone. Kei becomes curious and jokingly assumes that Naomi might have a secret girlfriend or something along those lines. Naomi denies it and explains that this is merely a consultation related to his part-time work. Kei thinks about it while eating his noodles. After some consideration, Kei says that in his line of work, he often encounters people with special circumstances, and social interaction involves recognizing and respecting those circumstances. For Kei, it is impolite to talk about matters that someone does not wish to talk about. Naomi agrees with Kei's perspective. Kei then concludes that Naomi probably does not need to bring up that topic at all. In the end, what matters is whether Naomi can protect what he believes will bring happiness. Kei asks if that interpretation is correct. Naomi reflects on Kei's words for a moment, that he then comments that, just as he thought, Kei really does think like an adult. Kei responds that something this trivial should not be a problem for an adult. After that, Kei casually asks again whether Naomi was referring to a girlfriend earlier. Naomi tells him that he should not be curious about that. Kei laughs it off and says he is only joking, adding that Naomi can talk about it whenever he feels ready. Kei admits that he himself has many things he has not yet told Naomi. Naomi teases Kei by praising him, and Kei says that he is genuinely happy to receive praise from Naomi. After school ends, Naomi meets Yui and immediately apologizes for making her wait. Yui responds that she has only just arrived as well, so there is no problem. Naomi then invites Yui to leave together. He also apologizes for calling her so suddenly, and Yui reassures him that it is fine. Yui then asks where they are going, and Naomi explains that he receives a discounted ticket to TOEFL from Kasumi. Kasumi cancels her own plan a few days earlier and gives the ticket to Naomi as a form of apology. They soon arrive at TOEFL, where a staff member greets them and guides them to their seats. Yui looks around and wonders if this place is what people usually call a cafe. Naomi confirms that it is, and explains that the shop is quite popular in the area, especially for its black tea. Naomi himself rarely has the chance to come here alone, but since he recently gets a discount ticket, he thinks it is a good opportunity. Naomi then thanks Yui for coming along, and tells her that she can order anything she likes. Yui feels confused by this, and thinks that, in that case, she should be the one treating Naomi instead. Naomi explains that this arrangement benefits both of them, and asks Yui not to feel shy about ordering whatever she wants. After considering it, Yui chooses Wadalapam. Naomi has never heard of this dish before, but since it is recommended by the cafe, he believes it must be good. Naomi then orders apple pie for himself, and they give their orders to the staff. While waiting, Yui looks around the cafe and feels that the interior is very pretty. She takes out her phone and searches for what Wadalapam is. She finds out that it is a type of pudding from Sri Lanka. Naomi checks whether Yui is comfortable with having pudding, and Yui shows that she really wants to try it. When their orders arrive, Yui is amazed because this is her first time seeing Wadalapam in person. Naomi then suggests taking a commemorative photo. Yui ends up taking a picture of Naomi instead, which makes Naomi wonder why his photo is taken. Yui becomes confused since Naomi mentions taking a keepsake photo. She then asks if what Naomi actually means is taking a picture of the Wadalapam. Naomi clarifies that this is what he intends. Yui apologizes because she is not used to this kind of situation. She then takes a photo of the Wadalapam. After that, she swipes through the images on her phone and sees the photo of Naomi again. She asks whether it is all right if she does not delete that picture. Naomi replies that it does not bother him much and asks for her reason. Yui explains that she thinks the photo can serve as a memory of their visit today, so deleting it would feel wasteful to her. Naomi lets out a small sigh and says that he is fine with it. Yui shows that she understands and thanks him for allowing her to keep the photo. Naomi, on the other hand, thinks that photos of himself only take up storage space on the phone. Naomi then invites Yui to try her dessert first. He tastes the Wadalapam, and his eyes widen in surprise at how delicious it is. Naomi asks her what she thinks, and Yui explains that it has 2 layers made of cake and pudding, with a very pleasant flavor and just the right amount of cinnamon. Naomi feels relieved and happy to hear that Yui likes it. When Naomi tries his own apple pie, he also finds it extremely good. After that, they exchange plates and try each other's desserts. Both of them agree that everything tastes wonderful. Naomi comments that the cake part is soaked with plenty of syrup, yet it is not overly sweet and feels just right. Meanwhile, Yui says that the apple pie is very crispy, and the balance of sweetness between the apples and the custard is perfect. Naomi finally understands why this cafe is so popular, and Yui comes to the same conclusion because the food is truly delicious. Yui looks genuinely happy. Naomi points out that Yui is finally smiling, which confuses her at first. Naomi explains that after their conversation the day before, Yui seems anxious throughout the day, so he hopes that by eating something delicious together, he can make her smile again. Yui feels deeply moved when she realizes that Naomi brings her here to cheer her up. Naomi says that this is only part of the reason, but he also wants to apologize properly. He apologizes for making a one-sided judgment before. Yui tells him that he does not need to apologize because she understands that Naomi acts that way because he cares about her. She then apologizes in return for behaving awkwardly. Naomi recalls what Kei says about protecting what one considers precious. He begins to wonder what is most precious to Yui. Naomi thinks that seeing Yui smile is enough, and that the most important thing for him is to never make her sad. Yui remembers that she once says it hurts to forget Naomi's kindness. Naomi then asks her that if she feels guilty about him, could she keep what they share a secret for his sake? Yui looks confused and asks what he means. Naomi explains that when Yui thinks about him, she tends to feel that she does not contribute enough, even though he never wants to see her with a sad expression. That is why he now asks Yui to do something for him instead. Naomi says that if they keep this just between the two of them, maybe Yui can feel a little lighter, and he openly admits that this is his selfishness. Yui smiles and says that this is a rather forceful way of being selfish. Naomi replies that he cannot be more selfish than this. Yui thanks him and says that, just as she expects, Naomi is truly kind. Naomi denies it, insisting that he is not kind but selfish. Yui says that this is a bit unfair, because she cannot say no when Naomi puts it that way. Naomi understands her point. Yui then suggests that they keep this a secret between the two of them. She recalls that Naomi says she will be in a good mood if she eats something delicious, and she feels slightly surprised that Naomi thinks she is that simple. Naomi then says that the first time he ever sees Yui smile is when she eats carriage. Yui argues that this is only because Naomi's cooking is very good. Naomi answers that if that is the case, then in many ways, it cannot be helped. Yui agrees with him. Naomi then offers to order another menu item, since they still have a discount ticket. Yui hesitates at first, but then decides that she wants to try the original toff scone. Naomi calls the staff to place the order. Later, in class, Naomi greets Yui, but she does not respond. Kei is surprised and wonders if Naomi should say something more natural, like asking about breakfast. Naomi says that he never talks about things like that, and besides, it is fine for them to be like this. Once again, Yui turns her face away from Naomi, then quietly smiles.